Welcome to Carren's Couch, and thank you so much for tuning in this week. Now, I've got a very, very special guest that I really am excited to introduce you to. We've got somebody joining us who is probably going to do a couple of shows with us on a series that is very near and dear to everybody who follows this show. It's all about relationshiping. Now, I have to tell you, when I went out to try and find somebody that we could talk about relationshiping, I wanted to make sure that I was going to get an absolute expert in the topic, because I know that relationships can be really challenging. So we found this particular lady all the way over in New York. And when we spoke on the phone and we connected on Skype prior to the show, I don't know, I felt like I'd found my new best friend. You know, it feels like we're just peas and carrots. We just seem to fit and go together. And that's why I knew that this particular woman was going to be perfect for us. Purely because if she's a match for me, I know she's going to be a match for you. You are going to absolutely love her. I want to introduce you to the author and creator of a media commentary all about relationships called The Shrink Wrap. And I'm going to tell you how you can get hold of all of her information and her website and make contact with her towards the end of the show. But please help me welcome to today's episode of Carren's Couch, the beautiful, the stunning, extraordinary Dr. Jane Greer from New York. Thank you so much for joining us. What a treat to have you here.
Thank you so much, Carren, for such a lovely, gracious introduction. As lovely and gracious as you are, it is an absolute opportunity and pleasure to be able to spend time with you on the couch and to lend some input to some of the issues that people are wrestling with in their relationships. So hopefully they can get better and they can make them better.
Awesome. So, Dr. Greer, let's start off with the most important topic that is kind of top of mind right now, based on some of the questions that our viewers have sent in to us. Controlling partners. Let's talk about controlling partners. We've had a question from one of our guests where they've suggested that they're not quite sure whether they're in a controlling relationship. You know, their partner is not telling them what to do and what to wear and where to go, but they feel like they don't really have much say in the way that the relationship is going. They're feeling a little bit hemmed in and a little bit hog-tied. How does one identify if they are in a relationship with somebody who is controlling and they're kind of surrendering their control? How does somebody identify that that's going on?
That is such a great question. And I think first marker is that when you start to make all your choices and decisions based on your effort to please your partner so that you don't risk their getting angry, upset, critical, or disappointed with you, and your goal becomes keeping them happy to the point where you begin to sacrifice and give up what's important to you, what's meaningful to you, then you're starting to cross the border into the land of control. And once you're in that land of control, it becomes so quick and easy, a landslide into suddenly looking to your partner for permission and approval for each and everything you do.
Doesn't that kind of happen naturally in a relationship anyway? I mean, you know, don't relationships tend to be this series of give and take, and I want to please you and you want to please me, and we want it to be nice and free and easy between ourselves? So what's the difference then between wanting to be pleasing to your partner and create a nice mutual exchange between you versus controlling? What's the difference there?
The difference is degree. You just said it, mutually sharing. When two people are looking to please each other, the word that must come into play is compromise, is sharing. So there's a willingness on each person's part to make the compromise, to put aside your need in the moment to meet your partner's need with the expectation that they will reciprocate and that they too will accommodate and be responsive to your need, depending on how important it is. So you're absolutely right. When that happens, you get the give and take, you get the flow, you get the, well, it'll all come out in the wash. I did 6 things, he'll do one thing that's really important. And you come away feeling that your needs are being heard and responded to. When you're with a controlling partner, there is no space for your needs. There is no mutuality. There is no reciprocity. There's be reasonable, do it my way, or else I'll be angry with you. And then you will get that person either blowing up at you or withdrawing from you. But ultimately, they're not willing to budge and respond to the things that matter to you. So inch by inch, you start to give up the things that are important, whether it's the way you dress, or a particular television show you like to watch, or a painting you want to hang on the wall, or a chair that you want to keep in your room. We can really make issues with our partners over everything. Everything can be important or not. But when whatever's important to you, there suddenly is no room for you're being controlled.
So with that then, the interesting thing about that, you mentioned that a partner can either get angry or they can withdraw. So one of them seems very overt and the other seems very covert in terms of the way that people demonstrate the way that people demonstrate how they control in a relationship. Because, if somebody was to withdraw, would we normally see that as controlling? Would we normally identify that as controlling? Or could we potentially miss the signs that in and of itself is trying to control and manipulate the relationship simply by withdrawing their love, withdrawing themselves, withdrawing their conversation?
Beautifully said, because that's exactly what happens. You don't even realize the soft sides, the subtlety of a partner withdrawing in silence or in anger, sulking, if you will, being remote, being distant. All you know is that you don't like it and you want it to stop. And so if it means that you go to the restaurant they want to go to, or okay, you go have lunch with their family on Saturday, even though you didn't want to do that, or okay, you say, fine, go out with your friends and hang out whatever time you want, if that's what'll make you happy. The ultimate objective is to get them to stop being upset and angry with you and re-engage their love, affection, and approval. So the silence is more subtle. You don't realize it, but it's as manipulative and it's as intentional as the angry, I'm so mad at you, I can't believe you won't do this with me, or I can't believe you're making an issue with this. Whatever and however that anger is expressed, what you want is for the anger to stop. And by acquiescing and yielding, you ultimately wind up being controlled.
So, Dr. Greer, why do people feel it's necessary to control each other? I mean, in relationships, it's supposed to be all about love. I mean, you think about when we first get together with somebody, we think that they're Christmas. We think that they're amazing. We see all the wonderful things about them. We see all the beauty and the magic in them. And then over time, relationships change. And I think most of us actually get that and kind of expect that. Why do you think a relationship would head down the path of a partner being controlling and feeling like they need to have the one and only say as to how that relationship is directed? And is that actually even love? Like, what is that?
Another great statement, because I have a book called What About Me? Stop Selfishness from Ruining Your Relationship. And in it, I have a chapter called If You Loved Me, You Would. And so for many people, what you will do in the name of love is what translates into feeling loved. And for many people, it's show me that you love me, prove that you love me by giving up your need and meeting mine. As soon as you have two people together, you have two sets of needs. And nobody in this world, not even identical twins that I've worked with and have done research on, have the same needs at the same time and want exactly what each other wants. If there are two people, inevitably somebody has to be willing to set aside what they want so that the other person can have what they want. And that is where control comes into play, because sometimes the other person will say, I should be this important. If I was important to you and you really loved me, it would be more important to you to please me and do this for me than to take care of yourself or to please yourself. And then ultimately, that person either will call their partner selfish, or the partner will start to feel that they're being very selfish because they're not accommodating and meeting their partner's need. And in my book, I talk about the martyr, the person who gives up everything because they feel like they're being selfish if they don't yield and give in to their partner's needs. And the taker, the person who has no compunction, asking, demanding, insisting that give to me, give to me, give to me, because if you don't give to me, I don't feel loved. And that's the challenge.
So you wrote an article in your shrink wrap about two celebrities, which are very well known to us all, Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes, as a classic example of this controlling nature inside of a relationship. Now, we all know that their relationship didn't last, and eventually it did come to an end. How does somebody in a relationship like this actually make it work, or is there no hope for it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it depends to what extent and how much of yourself you feel you're giving up along the way, and how much of a loss of identity is taking place along the way. With Katie Holmes and Tom Cruise, who she was, how she was living her life, the choices she made, the way she was going to raise her child, which I think ultimately became the catalyst for her to find the courage to move on. And many times that's what it takes. It's on behalf of your children that you will say, you know what, this is untenable. I have to sacrifice and give up too much, and I can't do it. But if you're with a controlling partner, the idea is not to get them to stop controlling you, but ultimately to do what Katie Holmes did, and that is to start to retake and reclaim control for yourself. Don't argue with them. Don't look for their permission to tell you you can or you can't. Just let them know what you're going to do. Take charge for yourself. You're an adult. You don't need permission. If you want to go out to dinner, if you want to go back to work, whatever it is that's meaningful and important to you, say to your partner, this is something that is really important for me to do, and here's what I'm going to do, or here's what I'm planning. You can empathize and you can say, look, I understand you don't like this, and I can appreciate if you're going to be angry with me, so be it. You're entitled to your feelings, but this is what I need to do for me. I hope you can support it. I hope you can understand it. And if you can't, we'll just get from there. And then you go forward from there. If as you break forward and start taking care of yourself and doing the things that make you feel good about yourself, put you back in touch with who you are and your identity, either your partner will begin to accept it and start to relate to you in a new and different way, which typically is what happens, or they will react with anger and such indifference. But it doesn't matter, because you've already reclaimed yourself. And if ultimately it's going to be the demise of the relationship, you've already left home and you're already traveling back on your own road of independence.
You know, you raise a really interesting point there, in that, you know, in our relationships, I think we create a certain dynamic, and for one person to be controlling, the other person has to be relinquishing control in order for that dynamic to even exist in the first place. So it kind of makes me think to myself that perhaps for those of us who have been in controlling relationships, or potentially are in controlling relationships, there's a place to start to look in terms of how are we enabling that dynamic to occur in our relationship. And it's a bitter pill to swallow, and it's a tough thing to look at, Because it's very easy for us to maybe suggest that our partners are being controlling, but when did we give up our own control? When did we begin to sacrifice ourselves? And I think that, certainly from this conversation with you, Dr. Greer, that's a really potent question, I think, that you've raised there for us to really dig deep and have a look at. Because we've helped create that. Relationship is 50-50, like there are two people contributing to that dynamic.
Exactly. We're used to, as children, being told what to do, trying to please our parents, trying to meet their expectations, trying so hard not to disappoint them. And part of maturity and moving into adulthood is learning to do that for ourselves, not looking to please our parents, not looking to meet their expectations, but transforming those into our own and living up to our own standards. And a lot of times people unwittingly get caught up in a relationship attempting to live as they were when they were children, with their spouse becoming that surrogate mother or father. And without even realizing it, they're looking outside of themselves for the permission and the clarity rather than inside. And so if you're dealing with a controlling partner, the first place to look is inside yourself at where can I start to green light my desires, my pleasures, my needs, the things that are important to me, the things that I want. And rather than asking for permission or approval, giving that to yourself and becoming proactive so that you take charge of your life and start to live it. I'm not saying selfishly by a long shot, but I'm saying with self. I called it having self-ness, and having self-ness enables you to move forward.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Dr. Greer, thank you so much for joining us on the show today to talk about this. I think that what we've done is we've at least been able to start to create some opportunities for people who potentially are in these sorts of relationships to start to look at it and start to face the realities of what controlling relationships are and create something new. And I like to use the term create a new normal for the relationship that they have with themselves and with their partners. So thank you so much for joining us. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I love the way you're so succinct and to the point with your explanations. So thank you so much, and we're going to see you right here on Carren's Couch again, Dr. Greer, because you're a legend.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it, and you are absolutely delightful and insightful. It's a complete pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. So stay tuned here on Carren's Couch, because I'm going to be right back. We're going to go down the rabbit hole on this conversation just a little bit. Stay tuned. So after talking to Dr. Jane Greer about controlling relationships, she's raised a really important point that I thought I would share my own personal view with you on. That point that really struck a chord for me was, what part of that are we contributing to? What part of that controlling dynamic are we adding to? Because as I said to Dr. Jane Greer was that, there's two people in every relationship, and it always takes two to tango. I think we're very quick to lay blame outside of ourselves and to look to others to see if they can change, because we see that the problems exist outside of ourselves. But here's something that I want to throw around with you, and it's just my view. When we see something in another person, Dr. Carl Jung, who was an incredible psychiatrist and philosopher, was the first to postulate the question of perception is our own projection. Now, what that means is what we perceive in another person is a projection of ourselves. And it's a really interesting question to throw around, because if I was to say that somebody else is controlling, well, how do I know how to recognize it? How do I even know what being controlling looks like unless I'm controlling? If I didn't have controlling inside of me, I wouldn't know how to identify it in another person. So that's what he means by our perception of another person is simply a projection of ourselves. And here's the thing, here's the invitation that I want us to talk about and I guess throw around here, is that when we see something in another person that we don't like, and that we've got some emotional charge around, and I think that's the caveat. You've got to actually have some emotional charge around it, rather than it just being an observation where you couldn't really care less. But if you've got some emotional charge around it, that's an invitation for us to, instead of look outside at another person to create change, it's an invitation for us to look inside, to go inside ourselves and say, where am I doing that? So if I say that my partner is controlling, where am I being controlling? Now, you may not be controlling right now, but have you ever been controlling? Where in your life have you ever been controlling? And if you can see it in another person, you will definitely see it in yourself, and something will be revealed to you. You'll be able to see that you're being controlling with your children, or perhaps you're trying to be controlling with your weight. Perhaps you're trying to be controlling with your parents or your job. Perhaps you're trying to control an environment where you're feeling particularly out of control. And that's the place for you to look, to start to do a bit of cleanup, to start to think, well, what can I do to stop trying to control and start to allow? Because the opposite to controlling is allowing. It's freedom. And that's what you want for yourself in your relationship, isn't it? So start to look at yourself and where you're controlling, and start to think about how you can give up some of that control, not need to be in control of things anyway. Because here's the reality. No matter how hard we try to control circumstances, no matter how hard we try to control other people, or no matter how hard we try to control our relationships, I've got to ask the question, how's it working out? It's not working out. I can lay money on it. It doesn't work out for us. All that lands up happening is we expend a whole world of energy, and we're the ones who land up exhausted because it doesn't work anyway. So let's give it up. Let's give it up and allow people to be who they need to be, and allow ourselves to be who we need to be. So go ahead, check it out, go inside, see if there's an answer there for you. Where are you being controlling in your life? And it's not just around controlling. Any perception that we have of another person is a projection of ourselves. So next time you say somebody is a certain way, or you lay claim to them being a certain way, or you believe their behavior is a certain way, instead of looking outside, look inside and find out where you've been doing that. And I believe when we do that, that's our indication of the next thing for us to heal so that we can expand. Maybe it's a trigger. Maybe it's an invitation that comes from universal forces to say, hey, let me bring you a controlling partner so that you can heal the controlling aspects within your own personality. I don't know. How does that sit with you? It's just my view. So hopefully in today's show, you've learnt some insights. You've got some hints and tips up your sleeve, and you've enjoyed meeting and being introduced to Dr. Jane Greer. I think she's absolutely brilliant in the way that she is so precise and able to hit the mark without a lot of fluff and a lot of nonsense. So hopefully you've enjoyed meeting with her and being with her on today's show as much as I have. So join us here next week on Carren's Couch. Go to our Facebook page. Let us know all of your questions. Don't hold anything back. If you want to talk to if you want me to talk to Dr. Greer on your behalf, send us through your questions. You can do it on Facebook at allthews.facebook.com/Carren's Couch, or you can also post your comments and questions on carrenscouch.com. We're going to be so excited to see you here next week. Make sure that you tune in and give us a 5-star rating when you download the podcast from iTunes. Bye for now.